So my name is Robert Fenner. I'm a partner here at Taylor Wessing and co-head the gaming group. And today this afternoon we're going to talk about the whole aspects of gaming and the metaverse. And people have been looking, what's the opportunity? You know, how do we make the metaverse work? To which my answer is NFTs, immersive experiences, new worlds, avatars, etc. It's all being done in the gaming community. The games market knows how to do all these things and has been doing them and makes a lot of money out of them. And I always like to get the message across that the gaming market, the video games market, outstrips the combined GDP of both films and music. I don't know if people were aware of the size of the gaming market across the world. And so it's a massive industry. And when you want to know what can you do in the metaverse, look at what the gaming companies have done, look at what they're doing at the moment and learn a lot from it. So today we've got a panel which consists of people from across the gaming industry. We've got Cherry Freeman, who's from Hiro Capital, one of the iconic VC investors into the gaming space. We have Jack Everitt, who is a real-life games developer, developing games in conjunction with Bitcoin. And then we've got Simon Barratt, who is from Cooperative Innovations and doing great things in terms of AR and VR. And I will let you introduce yourselves at that point.
Hi everyone. So I'm a founder at Hiro Capital, which I love that it's iconic, but we founded it in 2018. And Hiro is named after Hiro Protagonist. Does anybody know who that is? That's right. So Hiro Protagonist is the main character in Snow Crash, which was the first book that used the word metaverse, written by Neil Stephenson, actually on Zuckerberg's virtual bookshelf when he announced the name change. So we've been investing in the metaverse since 2018, but I would never have used that word until Meta announced their name change, and now I sort of feel slightly embarrassed using it.
Simon Barratt, CEO of Cooperative Innovations. So game developer and game tech developer for 24 years. So kind of doing this the first time round with kind of 2003 and 4, building what we consider the sort of closed metaverse now. I had my first VR headset in like the 90s. We're doing AR with PlayStation in 2012, so like always ahead of the time, and now the time is now for a lot of the tech we've been building. So we set up Cooperative Innovations 6 years ago to build multi-user VR experiences, apps and games. So we've launched several games on the MetaQuest, but also working with people like McLaren and BBC, Lionsgate Films, Nissan, like building experiences and apps and games for them, but also a platform that allows anyone to build and launch their own virtual worlds or mini metaverses or whatever we want to call them, sort of white labeling your own platforms.
Hi, I'm Jack Everitt. I'm the founder of Thunder Games, and we create casual mobile games to try and onboard like the next generation of people to Bitcoin, because we believe that Bitcoin is going to be the interoperable money for all of these metaverses, and we think that games are the perfect way to like teach people about Bitcoin in a fun and friendly way on the App Store and Google Play. You just download a game and you can start learning about cryptocurrency. And it's a great way to dip your toes into the circular economy that's happening in Bitcoin, because Bitcoin's metaverse is slightly different from the other blockchains, where it's programmable money is being sent around different apps like podcast apps, games, pornography. But you just, like in our game, you can program in the game to send your Bitcoin to like the OnlyFans version on the Bitcoin space. So yeah, we come at it from a different angle. We're trying to onboard people to Bitcoin and teach people about Bitcoin.
So just tell us more about how you're getting people into Bitcoin through the games. Because I know I can come onto your games, I can play, and I can win Bitcoin, even though I've had none to start with. Just sort of take me through the process and how that works.
Yeah, so we do traditional games like solitaire and some hyper-casual games as well. And so we monetize those normally with ads and in-app purchases. And because we have live events, tournaments, influencer events, competitions, prize draws that give away Bitcoin, it increases the retention of these games by like 20x. So the long tail retention is much, much higher, which means you've got more time to get people to buy things in your like games or metaverse. So then what we do is that's the money, we use that Bitcoin, we convert that money into Bitcoin to give back to the players in these events. And what we're trying to do is create a way for people to teach each other about Bitcoin, because normally, sorry if I keep saying the word Bitcoin, I'm a bit of a Bitcoin fanatic. Normally when you try and show someone about Bitcoin, you see the stupid things where they like teaching someone in a coffee shop, this is how you spend Bitcoin, and the person's not interested, the person behind the counter's not interested. But if you have Bitcoin in games, you create a shared fun experience for someone to want to join you and enjoy the fun that you're having with the game. So yeah, that's our approach to spreading Bitcoin with games.
And Simon, you're building AR, VR and immersive environments, etc. So to try and teach people what may work generally in the metaverse, what are you seeing that's working within what you're doing?
I mean, I think it's a wide range of things. So, like, one of the first things we did as a company was a virtual Queen Vic from EastEnders. So, like, you could hang out in a multi-user photogrammetry scan, select all the photos taken of the set and stuff. And this was like a BBC R&D project we did. So you had the ability to be anywhere in the world, but hang out in the pub and pour a pint, play darts, play on the fruit machine, and all this kind of stuff. But then we added a storytelling element on top of it, so you could record yourself as Doc Cotton or Phil Mitchell, get on my pad sort of stuff, and then film that and record from within a virtual environment, so the kind of virtual production within a virtual world, I guess. Unfortunately, it didn't actually launch, the project, which would have been amazing to have during COVID, to hang out with your mates in a virtual Queen Vic. But that kind of the basis for the tech behind that is what's then gone on to being the Curators platform we've got, which is our metaverse for arts, culture, heritage and museums. So we're working with like people like National Trust and Frank House and bringing their digitised assets and worlds to allow you to have virtual tourism, which was Alex mentioned before. So virtual tourism is something we believe will be very popular, and accessibility in all its forms is something we can enable through that platform. But for us, it's kind of just a test bed of the underlying platform for any type of metaverse and different use cases you might have for it, whether that's virtual shopping, events, work, collaboration, or gaming use cases on top.
And Sherry, you've invested right across the spectrum. So you've invested in VR, you've invested in user-generated content, etc. We've seen some massive successes in that, like Roblox and others. What do you see as the sort of best areas in which to invest now in terms of return on investment going forward and things?
Actually, a lot of the areas that we're excited about, you might not instantly think of as metaverse. A lot of the underpinning technology changes that we're seeing have been happening for a long time. They're accelerating, but those are creating opportunities to enable and then deliver very different, better consumer experiences, either through the content that's being created or how it's delivered to you. And that's where we're investing. So, we've invested in streaming technology that allows you to mix, your virtual game experience in VR with a real-world image of you playing the game. So you're in the stream. We've invested in a business that's placing adverts contextually within the video game format. So rather than stopping to watch a rewarded video, the advert is there in the game, and you just, you glance at it as it goes by. We've invested in, a pelvic floor trainer where, which has a hardware component like a tampon, and the woman exercises her pelvic floor by playing a video game on her phone where she's moving a ball around to hit targets. These are all, we've invested in supercomputing as a service. So this is, we have now the ability to process enormous amounts of data, huge AI programs, protein folding, mining Bitcoin, compiling software builds. The processes that are required are miniaturized. They can be placed all over your body. You can start to have real-world tracking. We've got huge advances in computer vision, which is helping with AR and VR experiences. So these are all the underpinning technologies and the experiences that are enabled by them. And of course, the consumer behavior of hanging out in virtual worlds with friends is nothing new, right? I mean, we used to call them MMOs before we called them the metaverse. They were massively multiplayer online games or online worlds. One of the companies we invested in, the CTO, first met his wife in World of Warcraft, which is a game that was made 10 plus years ago, and their avatars got married in World of Warcraft, and then 2 years later they met in real life and they got married and they're still together, right? So I think, but as you when we talk about metaverses and blockchain and NFTs, I think from an investment perspective, you've just got to have an eye on what you think the window is and when these things really cross the chasm and become massively adopted by consumers. Hugely exciting, but I think we have lots of history that tells us that we tend to call these technology revolutions we're over enthusiastic in the short term, and we're pessimistic in the medium term to long term. It's hugely exciting. It'll probably take a bit longer than a lot of people realise at the moment, or might imagine, because of all the noise. And people, I think earlier, I think Sam Huber was talking about Decentraland. I don't know if you saw the argument about the Dapper Labs data that got released. Does Decentraland have 30 users a day, or is it in fact, as it turns out, 8,000 daily active users? I mean, these are tiny, tiny communities of people in these virtual metaverses. So there's a little while to go, I think, until we see massive consumer adoption, but along the way there's lots of very interesting businesses.
So does that make Mark Zuckerberg right, or is
I think it depends what your vision is for. I mean, I think his vision of a world in virtual reality, a bit like Ready Player One, where you have this kind of disembodied self that you spend hours and hours engaging in. I think that's a dystopian vision, and I don't like it, and I don't think it's very realistic. I think our bodies are important to us, and eating, working out, having sex, these are all pleasurable things we want to do, right? You can't do them in the metaverse. So, you can't do them in these disembodied virtual worlds. But I think if you think about the metaverse as enormous advances in technology which enable much greater seamless interaction between the physical and the digital worlds, supported by data, personalised, gamified, then it's a much, much bigger opportunity than just some virtual space that we're going to socialise in, and it will impact every single aspect of our lives, and that is what I think is really exciting.
And I'll defend Zuckerberg slightly as well, which I think that the whole amount spent in terms of reality labs, when you look at their other headsets that they've developed and the avatar tech and the other stuff, like Facebook Horizons is pretty much the same stuff we're developing with PlayStation Home in 2010. It's not that dissimilar, but it's where that's going with the future enhancements behind it, and there's very smart people working on that, which I think it's a good thing that they've invested that, and we wouldn't be where we are in terms of VR and AR adoption without them pushing a lot of this stuff, regardless of what you think of Facebook and Zuckerberg and the data side of things, I think.
No, I mean it's interesting how heavily the investors have gone against him this week. I mean,
I bought a lot of shares.
Yeah, Facebook shares are down 70% since they were in 2021. It's a massive drop. They've been burning through $10 billion in 9 months, which is a lot of money to get through. But nonetheless, the amount of the hit that the shares have taken as a result of that seems to be completely disproportionate. Take $700 million off the value of the company over 20 months, over a year or so period. For that seems slightly over the top. But they brought out, just if we're on the sort of Facebook Meta side, they've brought out their new headset. It seems quite expensive. Do you think that means, do you think that consumers will pay the £1,500 or so that they have to pay for this? Or do you think that means we're actually going to, he's pushing that usage into the B2B arena rather than into the B2C arena?
See, I think it's a little confused in terms of what the target market is. You've got kind of prosumers who want the best quality headset they can have, which actually is $8,000 being a Vario headset, which they're amazing. You've got one in the office, and the quality of those is incredible, but you need an incredibly powerful PC to run it. In terms of standalone headsets, I think we're going to see $1,000 to $1,500 being the high end of that market, which probably is more enterprise use, pro users, rather than being the end user kind of $500 amount. They announced today, PlayStation VR 2 got announced for February, $550. Obviously you need a PlayStation 5 to plug it into, which if you can get hold of one. But the fact you can easily just one connection to plug it in, and the game quality and that existing audience of PlayStation users, we talk about the gaming sort of side of things being a big push for a lot of this stuff. I think that's really exciting. So we are going to see some new headsets in the next year or so. Apple may be finally showing what they've been working on. And I think that will be the point where we see different business models for how you purchase them. So whether it's a subscription model, you're getting, we see Microsoft Xbox and PlayStation subscription systems come with software. Well, if you're paying for your headset like you pay for your mobile phone contract, and software and access to the metaverse becomes part of that monthly subscription, that gets really interesting from a cost point of view.
I just want to jump in there as well. We kind of have this internal phrase, which sounds a bit like a cliche, but it just popped in my head, which is we say the metaverse is mobile, because mobile phones are everywhere. Third world countries, tier 5 to tier 3 countries, all have mobile phones to play games. And we see from our games that these are the countries that are adopting cryptocurrencies. Like our community manager fled Venezuela because of like financial persecution, basically. So he's like a financial refugee, and I pay him in Bitcoin, and it's like literally his life is Bitcoin. So all of these countries and all of our users are like all in South America, Nigeria, Africa. So we really think Metaverse is mobile, and that's why we're trying to get the money to these people.
Mm-hmm. And I would say that separately, so we, as much as VR and AR is going to be probably the best way to experience a lot of these things, that's a long way off for us all to be doing that all the time, as you were saying before. Like iOS, Android, PC, Mac, web, those are things we also deploy all of our experiences on as well, because that's where everyone is. We're talking about 15 million headsets maybe deployed into users' hands right now in the world. That's not a massive amount. But if the experience is really good there and we start to see these cheaper models for purchasing it, then it will be very interesting in the future. But it's a good 5-10 years from that being everywhere.
You think it's as long as that?
Possibly, yeah. And then on Ready Player One thing, the random thing I sometimes say, so the code on the screen in the movie Ready Player One is code I wrote. So a friend of mine was doing the VFX at the time, and I actually sent him screenshots through, and they used it on the film. So I wrote the Oasis, so I'm sorry about the dystopian world.
And Jack, do you think Bitcoin's going to be sort of part and parcel of the metaverse, and that the sort of use that people will make of it within the metaverse, including in your sorts of games, is actually going to bring it to the masses in ways that it hasn't done at the moment? Because it's been seen as very much a niche investor sector that a certain sector of the community goes for, but it's not a mass market thing yet.
Yeah, so the Bitcoin's usability has become much easier now with the Lightning Network. There's a lot of custodial and non-custodial wallets that make it super easy to use Bitcoin. So in our games, it's literally like one tap of a button and it sends it to your Bitcoin wallet. And you can program the money to go like to your like pornography wallet, to your podcast wallet, or whatever you want. Like, so you could earn some money in our game, and it's being in all these places. Or like, you could program, we were talking about ad networks earlier, you could program all of the publishers on an ad network. As soon as that ad is watched in all these publishers, like the money's sent instantly. There's no like lead time for any of this, the cash flow problems that you would have running a games business. So yeah, we really think that Bitcoin is the interoperable money, because just how we're seeing it being used, and people just like, we're not really having to teach anyone either, because they're motivated to like learn how to use it, like I described with one of our employees.
Okay. And Cherry, do you see this going beyond sort of gaming, etc., and into other applications? And if so, what do you think we're going to have it operating in educational contexts, in training contexts, in engineering? I know you worked for McLaren for a period, and they've been using it there, I know. So it's where do you see it going?
Yeah, someone said on one of the other panels that so games is the on-ramp for new tech, and that's 100% the case. I mean, I'd have thought for most of us, the first, maybe not everyone actually, maybe for some of us, the first computer you ever used was probably a computer. You know, it was probably like a Space Invaders in an arcade, and then the first home computer we played Pong and Breakout, and mobile phones. The first apps were all games. So I think that's virtual reality started with video games, now going into from everything from medicine to collaboration. So yes, I think that's right, and I think we're excited by things like in the future you'll have a digital twin which will live somewhere else, and it will have a profile of your body and your genetics, and you'll be able to. Medicines will be created that are personalised to you. So yes, this goes well beyond video games, but I think probably one thing that I would maybe possibly slightly different to the way other people have been talking about this today, but I would probably try to not think about the metaverse as a place. It's a bit frustrating because it sounds like a universe, right? Like it's somewhere that you're going to go to and have experiences. Do you think about it much more as the way that that digital experiences are changed, more increasingly personalised? Then yes. I mean, if I don't know if any of you use Zwift, for example. Zwift is is a cycling subscription, bit like Peloton, but much more interactive. But it's built in the game. It's built in the Unreal Engine, right? It's multiplayer. It's synchronous and asynchronous. It's got lots of metaverse characteristics from Hamza's presentation of massively multiplayer and persistent and so on. So yeah, it's a long-winded answer, but the answer is yes.
And I think people can get a sort of a feel for what the metaverse, which I just see as an immersive experience really, can be from a lot of the games that are coming out at the moment. I mean, certainly in Cologne at Gamescom there was some fantastic examples of that. But I don't know if do you want to talk about anything that you might be working on in that context?
And I think just to touch on the point Jerry was making on there in terms of where it is, the kind of different worlds. So from the museum example we've got, some people could be in the future with an AR headset on or whatever the glasses, or end up being in a couple of years' time. They could be walking around there with a friend who's around the world in a VR headset doing the same thing at the same time as someone on an iPad, exploring it with their avatar as well and looking to your left or right and seeing the same people. If it's a one-to-one digital twin, some museums we speak to want to make a different museum focused on one object or one story or whatever else. But yeah, in terms of the gaming world, I think we've got this difficulty when it comes to some of the Web3 and NFT side of things in terms of how that fits from a game design point of view. And so this is why I think it's great in terms of building custom games around digital currencies and everything else. But the slight challenge we're getting from a gaming point of view is how do you design a game still which is fun and engaging at the same time as meeting those other needs of NFTs and everything else without them being a weight around the neck of the designer, because designing games by themselves is hard, like really hard to balance them and to make them fun and engaging and fair, and multiplayer games especially. And so I think the interesting thing we're starting to see now is people are able to get past that and to build these interesting experiences with these pieces of tech.
Okay,
One of the criteria we use when we get a lot of pitches for blockchain games, and we have very simple screening criteria at the first gate, which is, it includes, for example, is there actually any point of the blockchain in this game? And if so, what is it? Is it trading? Is it creator economy? Like, what is it? But a lot of the time, it doesn't have any real significance. And I think if it doesn't play a fundamental part, then it shouldn't be. It should be a Web 2 game. And I think there was a reference earlier to like how hard it is to play a game that involves cryptocurrency. I mean, Axie Infinity is probably the best known crypto game, but has anybody actually played it? No, and you were at a Metaverse conference, so you have at least a little bit of interest in this, but it's really, really hard to get started. Hours of, buying some Ethereum, getting a wallet, converting it into Ronin, going into the marketplace, spending $2,000 on an Axie, and now you're ready to start playing. And that took me about 3 hours, right? And I was really committed to it. In the video games world, one of the key things you look at when you're trying to assess a game is how good is the FATUI, how good is the first-time user experience. That is a shit user experience, and any game that really wanted to come to market and scale as a mass market consumer game people want to play would completely fail. You'd have fractions of percentages of people who you've purchased really expensive marketing money, then install your game. How many of them are actually going to get through that to pay it? Like, almost none.
You did complete the first quest there.
I did complete that. Is that the question? Yeah.
And then, so it's just as a lawyer, I suppose got to ask the question: regulation, because regulation is likely to come down the track with whole aspects to this. Particularly, I suspect, in the Bitcoin side, but it's also in children and other areas, which has been certainly an issue for Roblox or whatever. What do you think about the regulatory side?
Well, it's coming. It's coming, and
yes.
We just have to build faster than the regulation can keep up, is my strategy. So different countries have got different ways they're looking at it. Like, I feel like the fight in America might last longer because they have like the First Amendment, free speech. Bitcoin is technically, you can write it on a document and send it to someone, so it might be protected like PGP was or something, but I don't know if I'm clutching at straws there. The European jurisdictions have got Mika coming out, which I haven't looked too much into, but some of the contemporary companies in the space of like having to change their on-ramp and off-ramp procedures to account for that. At the moment, because we're just doing prize draws, tournaments, competitions, we're just making sure that we're running legal competitions that just so happen to have small amounts of Bitcoin in it.
So I've been on the Yuki board, which is the trade association for interactive entertainment, for about 6 years previously, then served my 2 years away and back on it now. And so previously we had the in-app purchases, so the Smurfberries sort of thing years ago, so we were helping iOS and Android get the in-app purchases included in this sort of warnings and stuff, and the tricks like the 15-minute window after you purchase, download something so you can buy afterwards. So a lot of the stuff fixing those problems was partly done through industry moving on that stuff. Obviously online harms, safety bill and all this stuff coming down as well in terms of the UK. We saw Rec Room, which is a metaverse based on iOS and Android, and as well as Meta Quest, be told that their junior accounts can no longer play for less than 13 years old yesterday. So like there's lots of things moving in this area, and we're trying to talk to government here in the UK but also elsewhere about how this stuff does work. And this isn't commenting on blockchain or crypto side of things, which gets a bit murkier because the gambling definition is anything involving random numbers where you can make money from it. And that gets really scary because every game I've ever written has a random number in it. And if there's any form of way of making money from that, that means all games are gambling, which is kind of scary from a sort of sales point of view and running a company around that. So yeah, there's lots of scary grey areas which are emerging. And as a trade body, obviously with that hat on, I'm sort of trying to help that stuff. But also I've got like a stealth startup doing online safety stuff for the same reasons that we talked about before. Like there are lots of challenges in terms of personal space and avatar movement and all these kind of things that have become problems in the metaverse that don't really exist in current gaming. Big answer, but yeah, there's lots of stuff.
Joe, do you want to answer that one or no? Don't worry. We'll go to questions.
Sorry, I went off on one then.
I'll just say very hard.
Does anybody want to ask a question? Yes, the gentleman over there.
Thanks. I think we had a lot in the other panels about interoperability and how that's very important for metaverse experiences, and I probably would agree. Traditionally, gaming has been about companies retaining users in their ecosystem and in their spaces and, frankly, drawing as much money out of them as possible. How would the panelists see kind of interoperability working with gaming moving forwards and with metaverse experiences?
I mean, technically from a programmer sort of hat and designer hat, it's really difficult. Especially if there's any kind of utility or bonuses to those NFTs you want to transfer into a different game without breaking those games. Unless you have a separate server for people who have the cheat mode on of the NFTs they brought into it to balance it out. Like you're right in terms of as well, like the IP protection. So currently game developers would do a deal with, as it's Nike maybe on different games they've got, so FIFA might do one and another games company might do one, and both charge you for a microtransaction in those and keep that currency themselves. Unless that NFT's got a percentage built in of future transactions go to the places you used it, like those game developers aren't getting paid to implement something which will cost them development time to do that. So like when it gets to a practical point of view of making interoperability work, it's really difficult outside of maybe avatars and some form of customization of which spray paint you put on a wall and stuff, which we've been doing for a long time in some ways anyway. Streaming tech may allow us to do stuff which gets around some of those problems, because on the cloud you can render and draw a lot of this stuff which doesn't involve downloading and making it work in different game engines because it's been done somewhere else as a graphic and brought into it. And AI is another way we might be able to integrate some of these different things as well. So if there's like a slightly cartoony avatar or whatever else, then that could be done through AI on top of an existing game. But there's a reason that Epic have bought Fortnite, Fall Guys, made Fortnite, Fall Guys, Rocket League and all these other ones, because they've got a stable of great IP which can interoperate, because that gets around all the problems with those. So yeah, it's a big problem for games. Like if it's ever going to happen, it's going to be avatars, and we'll see on the game design side.
I think we're running short on time. So at this point, I think I'd say thank you very much indeed to our existing panel. Thank you very much indeed.